There's a quiet beauty in remembering who we truly are. Rupert Spira opens with an analogy, a small house, a big house, and space in between. And I paused right there, because isn't that where many of us are living? Between what we used to believe about ourselves and what we're slowly starting to remember. This process he calls Neti Neti. I am not this, I am not that. I am not my body, I am not my thoughts, I am not my story. It's a necessary unlearning, but not the final step. You can't just say, that's not a snake. You have to see the rope. So what is the rope? What are we? Rupert reminds us what we truly are is not something we need to look for. It's what is already aware, already here, already whole.
My first teacher, the then Shankaracharya of the north of India, gave an analogy. He said, in order to enter the big house, we have to first come out of the small house. And we sit for some time in between the two. And gradually the memory of the big house comes to us. So you have undertaken the initial stages of the self-investigation process. And the initial stages of self-investigation involve what's called the Neti Neti process. I'm not this, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my sensations, I'm not my perceptions. In other words, as you rightly said, I'm not my body or my mind. But the Neti Neti process is only the first stage of the path of self-inquiry or self-investigation. It doesn't lead, it's a preface to, but it doesn't culminate in the recognition of our true nature. It only tells us what we are not. It is necessary to see what we are. It is not enough to simply see that the rope is not a snake. We have to see the rope. If our investigation only takes us as far as it is not a snake, then there is still the possibility that later on we may mistake it for a stick or a shadow or a puddle. So we have to go further than just seeing it is not a snake. We have to see it is a rope. We have to go further than seeing simply what I am not. Although that is a prelude, we have to see what we are. In other words, what we are has to see what it is. What we are is not something that we can know. It's not something that is separate from us. I don't mean to suggest that what we are is something that is separate from that which sees it. When I say we have to see what we are, I mean I have to know what I am. The I that I am has to know itself clearly. You, awareness, it's true you are not a body or a mind. You have to see that you are awareness, and that awareness shares none of the qualities and therefore none of the limitations of the body or mind. In other words, you have to see that you are not temporary, you are not finite, you are inherently peaceful. In other words, you cannot be disturbed. And how do we see clearly what we essentially are? Well, in exactly the same way that we see clearly what anything essentially is. If you want to know what something is, you give it your attention. If you want to know about mathematics, you give your attention to mathematics. If you want to know about music, you direct your attention towards music. Whatever you want to deeply investigate, you simply give that thing your attention. And as a result of shining the light of your attention on that object, what it is, gradually or suddenly, becomes clear. So it's exactly the same thing here. If you want to know what you essentially are, you have to give yourself your attention.